Thank you very much, everyone, for joining us. This is the Microsoft Office Add-ins community call. It's where we talk about everything that's new and exciting in the world of Office add-ins and Office extensibility. Today, we're going to be talking about some new developer tools you can use, a new runtime that add-ins will be processed in, and some new automation options from our sister product, Office Scripts and Power Automate. So my name's Alex Jerabek. I'll be your host for today. I'm going to be joined by Courtney, Sudheer, and Daniel to talk about the developer tools, Edge WebView2, and Office Scripts. I encourage everyone, as we're going, to please ask your questions in the chat. We have members of the product team in the call that can help answer them. Any that we don't get to will be posted with a blog post following this recording, or following this call, along with the recording of the session. So if we don't get to you, rest assured, we will eventually. All right, so without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Courtney Owen, who's going to talk about the new add-in developer tools for us. So Courtney, are you on the call?
I am on the call. My name is Courtney Owen. I'm an engineer on the Office Platform Extensibility team. And specifically, I work on DevX features, developer experience features. So over the last quarter, we've shipped a couple of really cool features. One of them is ScriptLab for Outlook. And I'm not sure if any of you have experience with ScriptLab, but ScriptLab has been supported on Excel, Word, and PowerPoint for quite some time. But we haven't had support for Outlook until, well, just a few weeks ago. And then the next thing I'll be talking about is the new debug extension for VS Code that allows you to debug task pane add-ins in Visual Studio Code. And you can develop and debug all in the same tool, something that wasn't possible until this extension was shipped. So let's start out with ScriptLab for Outlook first. So I've got my Outlook open here. I already have the extension installed. You see it here, ScriptLab. But if you want to install it yourself, you can just go into the extension store. And I want to give fair warning, this machine that I'm demoing on is not the most robust machine. In fact, I ordered a new one yesterday, so things are not going to be as snappy as they might be on your machines. So if I type in script here, we see ScriptLab for Outlook, and you can read more details about what it does. But for those of you who are not familiar with ScriptLab, it's a tool that was designed during a thing that we have at Microsoft called Hackathon, where you can basically work on kind of any little project that you want to. And a few people got together, I guess maybe 2 years ago, and worked on ScriptLab. And what it allows you to do is to develop Office.js code to perform actions in Office and to immediately see the results of that code. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open the runner here. And this will probably be much snappier on your machine than it is on mine. Okay, so that's open. So first I'm just going to show you, I have a script already loaded. And if you see this little tack here, this allows you to pin the task pane such that when I navigate through mail items, the task pane will remain open and pick up the context of the mail item that I'm in. So here I'm doing, who is this mail from? I'm going to click this, and it's going to say Azure DevOps. When I go down here, it remains open, and it says it's from Lou. And you can just keep going on from there. Now, let's say that I want to do a new script. I want to create a Office.js script that does something different. So then I can either go here and click on code, or there's a button here that says Open Code Editor. Okay, now see, that's the previous script that I created. Who's this from? But we have a library of samples that you can choose from here. And ScriptLab for Outlook is supported in Outlook Read mode, Outlook Compose mode, Appointment Create mode, and Appointment Attendee mode. So the samples here indicate what the mode is. So since I'm in read mode right now, let's find another read script. And see how that automatically loaded there? And then I can go, who's this to? And once again, navigate through here, and you can see this Office.js is immediately executed in your pane here. So you can, make a quick change. Just add a couple exclamation points. And you'll see those exclamation points were picked up. Message sent to. So it's a super fast way to test out your Office.js scripts. And this is new to Outlook. This is also supported on the web. So if I go over to the web here, the UI is a little bit different for the web, just because the way Outlook Web Access works. And so here, it's a flyout here. And you do run. And you can pin it just as you do in desktop. Once again, who's this from? Who's this from? So that's how Script Lab for Outlook works. So we work on Edge, Chrome, Safari. We work on Windows Desktop, Mac Desktop. Firefox right now has a bug in it, not just for Outlook Script Lab, but also for the other host as well. So hopefully you guys will appreciate that and give it a shot. So the next thing I'm going to move on to is the Debugger extension that we just shipped to the VS Code marketplace a couple weeks ago. So it has 217 downloads right now, which is pretty good, I think, for a couple weeks. I'll give you a little history on this. If you were to be developing a add-in, task pane add-in in the past, you would have to, if you were authoring it in VS Code, you had no way to debug it in VS Code as well. You would have to either debug it online in Chrome DevTools or use this tool called Edge DevTools. And doing so created a very disjointed experience. You had to hop back and forth between authoring and debugging. With this new extension, you can author and debug all in one tool. So I'm just going to quickly demo how this works. I already have it installed here, but you can find it in the store under, if you just type in add-in, it'll be the first one that pops up. So what I have here is a little project, task pane project I created called COVID Tracker. And basically it queries active COVID data and will show you a chart using Office.js. We'll kick it off here. And what this is going to do, this will automatically sideload meaning launch the host application, register the add-in, and then it will automatically attach the debugger. So I'll click this. And I'm going to go over to my code here. And I already have a couple breakpoints set. And we should see Excel launch in a second. This is where you're seeing the sluggishness of my machine. So we'll play some elevator music while this is proceeding. Okay, so we've got my task pane add-in loaded there. Now I'm going to go back to VS Code, and this will attach in a second. There, we're attached. So you see the progress bar stopped. Now I'm going to go back to the add-in here. And so if I can just sort of give you an idea, in the past, I could have been coding this, and then if I wanted to debug it, I would either have to open this Edge DevTools and then pick this. I'm not going to open it now. Pick this COVID tracker, and then I could debug that task pane add-in. But it required going back and forth between two tools. So here I can debug and code, and what I'll show you is I can actually make changes, and they're picked up immediately. So I'm going to get the data for the US. So we hit our breakpoint there. So now if I hover over this, you're going to see undefined. And if I F10 through it, and we look here, data, now we have the US data. So I'll carry on down through, and I hit another breakpoint here. And later on, I'm going to change this to white, the background to white. So you can see that I can author and still keep my debug session attached. So then we'll go through this again. Data by country. And I'm going to change this to, actually, I should have changed it the first time around. So let's do that again. Because see, it just reloaded there. Okay, and now the other thing I'm going to do is at runtime, I'm just going to change the title of this chart in the watch window. And I'm just going to call it demo. And you'll see that that watch setting gets picked up. And we'll go back to the chart, and we see that the background is now white and the title is demo. And so the cool thing is that I can author the code, make changes at runtime. If you have your dev server running, it'll automatically pick up those changes and build automatically without losing your debug session. And you can do all the sort of standard debugging stuff that you're used to. So that's available in the store now. A couple of little caveats is you have to run VS Code as administrator. And that's because we need permissions to be able to inject our debugging code into the Edge process. And then the other thing is that this will currently only work if you're using Edge WebView. In the very near future, we're going to switch to using Edge Chromium WebView. And so the debugger, once that happens, will not be able to attach to the task pane process. We are planning on supporting that. I don't have a time frame on when that's going to happen, but we are planning to support Edge Chromium. We also have a tool which we were going to demo today that will allow you to switch the web view from Edge to Edge Chromium to even IE. So if you were running your web view in Edge Chromium, you still wanted to use this extension, you could use that tool just to switch back to Edge if you're running Edge Chromium. So that's about all I have.
All right, thank you, Courtney. Yeah, we'll be demoing that WebView switcher on the next month's community call. There are a few questions for you if you have a second, Courtney.
Sure.
So a question from Jack. Is there an ETA for the Mac Office apps? And will this support debugging projects built with bundles like Webpack for React or Vue?
Yes. So what this supports currently right now, Webpack and TSC, TypeScript compiler. So what I'm demoing right now is Webpack. And, Webpack, we kind of inherited this code from the Edge team. And one of the things that the Edge team did not support was Webpack. So I did a lot of work to get Webpack support in. Vue, I'm honestly not sure if that is supported. I could check after this and see. The second question about Mac, I don't envision Mac being supported in the very near future. The code base is very Windows centric, and that would require quite a bit of work that I don't see us having allocated at this point in time.
All right. Thank you, Courtney. We also had a couple questions around other IDEs, or in particular just Visual Studio. Will there be any plans to support those?
So Visual Studio right now, you can debug task pane add-ins that run in IE right now in Visual Studio currently. If you were running in IE WebView, in your task pane add-in, there's actually a little button that you can click that says like open in Visual Studio. That's not supported in Edge, nor will it be supported in Edge Chromium, I believe. So, Visual Studio has support for IE. I believe doesn't for Edge. Maybe it will for Edge Chromium.
All right. Awesome. Thank you very much. Cool stuff. ScriptLab is one of our most beloved things for Excel and Word, so it's very exciting to see it now look. And yeah, as the chat has said, it's great to see the VS Code debugger after a while. So thank you, Courtney. I really appreciate your time.
Sure.
Okay. So speaking of the new Chromium Edge WebView, we're going to turn it over to Sudheer, who's going to talk about Edge WebView2 and the kind of future for add-in runtimes. So Sudheer, are you on the call?
Yeah, I'm here. Thanks, Alex. Folks, thanks for being out here. Again, my name is Sudheer Maremanda. I'm a program manager over here on the Office platform team. I am super excited to be here talking about the new Chromium-based Edge WebView2 runtime for Office add-ins. If you've been in the call over the past many months, you've probably heard me talk about the Edge Spartan or the Edge WebView1 control that we released. I believe that was sometime last year. I think it was around April, May timeframe last year. So again, we've been busy over the past year and a half or so working on the Chromium version of the WebView2. And again, we're here at this point where I think we're ready to take that next step. But certainly we need a bunch of help from you folks to make sure that your add-ins and your scenarios are working in this new Edge WebView2 before we can actually release this out to production. So just a quick history first before I give you some details on how you can go in and help us. First and foremost, these are the 3 different runtimes that we currently use on Windows for running your Office add-in. Of course, Internet Explorer or Trident. That's the default browser control on most of the Windows operating systems, 7, 8, and 10 at this point. For Windows 10, IE is the default runtime or the default web control until Windows version 19.02. I just want to point out that we're still seeing a bunch of launches using the IE runtime, meaning we still have a number of users that are using Windows 7 or Windows 8 or older versions of Windows 10 to launch Office and then launch Office add-ins on those computers. So just want you to be mindful of sort of supporting those users and supporting those configurations with for your add-in. The second one is, as I talked about, the one in the middle. That's the Edge Spartan. That's sort of the code name that we have internally, or the Edge WebView, if you will. That has been our default browser control with Office 365, that version number that you see on the screen, as well as Windows 10 and 1903. Again, that was the spring release of 2019, I believe. And the one that's coming up right now, of course, is Edge WebView2. The current plan is to ship this to all versions of Windows. So this browser control will be available for all Windows 7 and Windows 8 and Windows 10 versions. So you will have that available over there. Of course, you will need the latest Office 365 to be integrated with that control. So as long as you have the latest and greatest Office 365 version, and any version of Windows, if you will, that has the WebView2 control, we will be able to support Office add-ins on the Edge WebView2. And just as a quick note, because we have multiple of these web controls available to us, if for whatever reason a machine does not have, for example, the Edge WebView2 web control, we will fall back to either the Edge WebView1 or Trident or Internet Explorer, if you will, based on what's available on that computer. So your add-in will still run. I just want to make sure you understand that we fall back based on the control that's the most up-to-date control that's available on that machine. Okay. So just a quick note. I think most, if not all of you, know about WebView2. Of course, this is the latest and greatest Microsoft Edge browser-based web control. This is Chromium-based. This is the open source software-based web control. As I mentioned, this is going to be consistent across all Windows versions. One of the cool things about this new browser and the web control is that this is going to be updated out of band from Windows or Office updates. So as and when there's a new patch or a fix or whatever it is in the open source software, we will ensure that fix gets out to all the computers out in the world as soon as possible. I think there's going to be a bit of delay, but certainly we're going to minimize that gap as much as possible and get this out of band for Windows or Office updates. It's going to be available across any application for you, of course, a Win32 application or the universal applications on Windows. Of course, what we're talking about over here is purely the Win32 aspect of integration with the WebView2 control. And again, as I said, last but not the least, this is something that's going to be always up to date, as in that is sort of the default setting for WebView2 on all Windows machines moving forward. Okay, so let's see, call to action. So this is where we are. Today, as of right now, we are not available in the Insider's fast ring as yet. But we are looking to get there very, very quickly, hopefully in the next week or maybe a week and a half. This is the version number that you'll see. That's our May fork of Office 365, the 16.0 13,001. That version plus will contain the integration with Edge WebView2 being the runtime for Office add-ins. And again, that's only going to be available in Insider's Fast starting about a week or a week and a half. So just definitely keep on the lookout for it. And as soon as that's available, just remember that as long as you're in the Insider's Fast ring, your Office add-in is going to start running on the Edge WebView2 runtime. And the way you know that it's running on the Edge WebView2 runtime is if you open the taskbar. If you don't have any browsers open, you will see msedge.exe being the process that's running your add-in, if you will. That's how you know that your add-in is running in WebView2. And by the way, that's just that screenshot that I have over there on the screen showing msedge.exe being the process that's running your Office add-in. You will need to be part of it. Office Insiders, I think most, if not all of you, are already part of Office Insiders to get these builds. If you're not, there's a link that I have out there for you to go in and join. Should be a fairly simple, straightforward process. Number two, very important, you need the dev or canary channel of the Edge browser. So make sure to go out and get there. I believe the link is microsoftedgeinsider.com, and you can choose your channel from there and install the browser. This is very important. This is the only place where you will have the web control available. Do remember, again, I'm probably preaching to the choir over here, but do remember that the browser is different from the web control. The web control is a thing that powers the browser. So you need the dev or the canary channel over here for that web control. Moving forward, we are looking to separate the web control from the browser itself. So I will likely be over here on this call next month or the month after and ask you to download a different executable, a different process to actually get the web control. Just sort of keep that in mind. But for now, get the dev or the canary channel, and you should be good to go with the new WebView2 control. But most importantly, the third bullet, test and validate your add-in, test auth, test all the corner scenarios of your add-in, and give us feedback on this. Like we need to know that all of your add-ins are working as is before we get this out to the production rings. And of course, I do have a GitHub sort of an area over there for you if you run into any issues or if you run into any sort of a problem running on Edge WebView2 for your add-in. If you can't select the area, if you wouldn't mind just sort of either putting WebView2 in the title of your issue or something like that, that'll just help us categorize it easier and better. And last but not the least, debugging. I know Courtney talked about a bunch of debugging. I'll say a couple of things. With the WebView2, you should be able to right-click inspect your add-in right away, right then and there. So if you open your task pane, just sort of right-click on your within your task pane, within your add-in task pane, and there should be an option over there to inspect, which is a great way to debug. Or you can get the latest Visual Studio 16.6 Plus that has the debugging built in for Edge WebView2. Okay, so that's all I have. Again, I don't have any fancy demos today because really we're changing the engine that's running your add-in. So everything is working as is. I will likely do a demo or two next month with a couple of additional features that we're working on from a WebView2 standpoint. But for now, I'll pause and see if there are any questions or comments on this.
Yeah, there's a question for context. Someone's asking, why is the browser and the web control separate?
Why is the browser and web control separate? So a couple of reasons. One is we want to make sure that we rev the web control much, at a different cadence than the browser. That's sort of one reason, because there are a number of partners that the Edge team has in terms of the people who integrate with their control. And the requirements of those folks is a little different from the browser itself, which is why I think separating them seemed like the best direction to move forward. So that's one of the core reasons to sort of separate them. Number two, we want to make sure that the WebView2 is a core component of the operating system. We can't force people to install the browser, quote unquote force, if you will, but certainly requiring WebView2 as a component of the OS will be required moving forward, because there are a number of features that are going to be dependent on WebView2, as well as, of course, your scenarios like Office add-ins that are dependent on Edge WebView2. Does that make sense?
Yeah, sounds great. Thank you, Sudheer. We've also had some questions around the manifest version. I know you're like one of the resident experts on the manifest, but discussion about if there's a way to get the manifest version number through Office.js. It doesn't sound like there's that today, but is that something we're maybe exploring in the future, or is there a workaround?
That is a good question. So we sort of switched gears to manifest. So you want to be able to get the version number of your add-in in the manifest using some sort of an Office.js API. I will have to take that feedback and figure out how to do that. That is not something that we allow to do using the Office.js APIs today. Okay,
Awesome.
Anything else? Just scrolling through the questions over here, Alex, to see if there's anything else that I missed.
I believe that's all. But yeah, we're excited to see your demos and upcoming calls. And thank you so much for giving us this heads up.
Awesome. Thank you.
Cool. All right. Thank you. And yeah, please go out and test with this new WebView. If you find any issues, raise them on the Office.js GitHub. That'll help us make sure we don't break everyone's add-in when this rolls out in full. So we've been pasting links into the Office Insiders and Edge Canary builds into the chat. Please get out there. Let us know if you have any feedback or any concerns. So up next, we're going to go to Office scripts and Power Automate. So Danny, are you on the call?
Yes, I am. Thanks very much, Alex. Good morning, everyone. I'm going to be speaking a little bit about Office scripts with Power Automate. I'm one of the PMs on that part of the product, and this may be a little bit of a repeat for anybody who's joined us at the MVP Summit or Build, but I'm going to try to whip through some of this content and give you guys a little bit more of a forum for asking questions. Basically, what we have is an integration for Office scripts with Power Automate that is going to become imminently available in the next week or two, and kind of consistent with the overall Office scripts mission of trying to empower everyone to easily automate tasks and run their businesses efficiently anytime and anywhere. The push towards integrating really tightly with Power Automate has been a really core component of our ability to kind of dramatically increase the capabilities of Office scripts beyond just the bounds of Excel. And it's been a real core part of capturing this top right part of this programmability in Office matrix. Again, this may look familiar to some of you, but the idea that we're going for here is if COM and Office web add-ins kind of cater towards what a lot of you guys may be available or may be familiar with as a developer audience, it has a little bit more of an overhead, definitely is a bit more on the complicated end of the spectrum, and is less likely to be accomplishable by somebody who has more minimal programming experience. Additionally, COM add-ins and VBA are confined only to the desktop. And so what Office scripts has been filling for us is this sort of area of the solutions marketplace that is more approachable to end users. It's a little bit less overhead to kind of spin up and get started in. You can kind of imagine that this occupies a space similar to what Script Lab does for you guys in a testing capacity, but in a more formal and regularly usable way. And additionally, the web and collaboration part is something that is highly related to this whole Power Automate integration. And we also have a couple additional features around simplified API and script sharing coming out. I'm going to be talking less about those, and there may be some on the call who can address questions in those areas. But the main thing I'm going to be focused on today is running Office scripts via Power Automate. So again, the goal here is to really help our users to accomplish more with Excel and to interface with a whole bunch of other services beyond just what is offered with Excel alone. And this is going to allow you to really automate a whole bunch of like complicated and intricate things that you would not otherwise be able to do, especially so in like scenarios where you might need to interface with outside data, interact with other services, etc. And some of these things may be either other Microsoft products like Outlook, Power BI, Teams, even non-Microsoft products like Salesforce, Twitter, and DocuSign. There really are a phenomenally high number of different connectors available on this service, and it dramatically expands the things that Office Scripts is able to accomplish. And one of the things that we've also made like a fair bit of effort or put in a fair bit of effort to accomplish is we are able to accept parameters and return data. So this really is like a full deep integration with Power Automate, where previously the Power Automate Excel connector could accomplish like a handful of simple tasks. Again, this is a connector that did exist prior to this new imminently released upcoming feature. You were mostly only able to accomplish things like reading and writing data from a table in an Excel workbook. But as of the moment that this is released, which is going to be sometime very soon, this will actually allow you to accomplish almost any operation that is possible via Office.js Excel. So that is going to be a really, really big deal, and we are really excited to see what people can do with this. Again, it's a little bit more catered towards end users that are not able to build their own add-ins, but I'm actually also kind of interested to hear from you guys as to whether or not you see this as a potential like prototyping bench, or even something that you might be able to build your more formal end solutions in. So with that, I'm going to take over the screen share a little bit and try to do a quick demo. Again, I am kind of hedging by apologizing to anybody who has seen this content directly already. As a part of the Q&A section, please feel free to request that I explore something kind of off demo. I'm totally open to trying things out, showing you how things work, because this thing is basically ready to go out the door, and it is ready for you guys to kind of play around with, kick the tires on. And I'm more than happy to do a little bit of that here in this call. What I'm going to be showing you for this particular demo scenario is one of the things that we often saw with some of the customers that we talked to in putting this product together is it actually seems to be a very common thing that our customers want to accomplish, or a very common scenario where some person on a team has some sort of status report or like to-do list or thing that they need multiple team members to go complete within like some given either regular cadence or some given amount of time. And there is a non-trivial time investment necessary to actually track everyone that is responsible for a task on said spreadsheet down and remind them to complete their task area. And in this particular case, I have myself and a fake version of another team member who have not yet completed their status report. And that might take a little bit of time to like get the fake version of our dear friend Frederick to actually complete. But with the addition of Office Scripts, this becomes actually a very trivial and automated task. So what I've got here is a script that allows you to basically get all of the people in this table that have not yet completed their report. I'm just going to run it real quick for you and not focus on the actual logic. As you can see here, what's happened is the missing rows values have been highlighted, or the cell has been highlighted, and the output is the actual name of the individual and their email. So again, trying to focus mostly on the Power Automate integration rather than the actual logic. I'm going to take you guys over to Power Automate, and here I can actually go to my flows. Currently, this is only available as a feature in preview environments. This is what's going to be changing in the next couple of weeks, and it's going to be a production Power Automate set of environments. You do not have to create and set up a special environment in order to access the feature, or you will not. And in creating a brand new flow, I'm just going to make a manual one and add an Excel connector as the first action step. Now, inside this Excel Online for Business connector, which is again something that has previously been available, there is now going to be an additional run script preview action. And by adding this, I can actually find the location of the workbook that I'm interested in targeting. Since this is a demo tenant, it's just kind of top level task reminders workbook. And then I'm going to grab the script that I actually want to run on it. So here I have a get people script, which is again the one that we've just kind of run. And what I'm actually trying to do here is I'm trying to accomplish automating this task of reminding everybody who wants to go or who needs to go fill out this spreadsheet and complete the status report cell to go do so without actually any effort on my part. So you might imagine that this manual trigger will eventually become some kind of like recurrence trigger that happens every couple of like days or weeks, whatever the cadence that you want it to occur on was. And then also we need to add a step for actually sending out an email. So here I think I'm actually going to do Teams card because that's another like cool integration. Email is fairly trivial, but the gist of what would happen in an email example is you would just grab the send mail Outlook connector. Oops, there we go. And then since this get people script outputs an object containing a list of both the person's name and then their email, I can then just select from the dynamic content section the user's email. It knows, Power Automate knows the fact that this email component is actually contained inside a list, and so it's smart enough to add an apply to each block automatically. Then I can say, please update your status, and say hi, name, please, etc. As mentioned, I'm going to do the Teams card version as well, and what that looks like is inside the Microsoft Teams connector, I actually have a whole host of different options, but one of them is I am able to post an adaptive card to a Teams user and wait for a response. So what I can do with this adaptive card block is, firstly, just like the email example, I can select the recipient. It'll automatically add the apply to each section. Then in the message section, this is actually where the contents of the adaptive card need to go. And I need to figure out where I actually put the window that had my adaptive card in it went. So I may do that in the background as we're answering questions, because that's sort of a core component of the adaptive cards approach. But you might imagine the gist here is that there's a JSON blob that defines an adaptive card. Highly recommend checking this out if you haven't yet played around with them. These are what adaptive cards look like. They're defined simply by a JSON blob and rendered by a combination of JavaScript, CSS, etc. They actually work fairly nicely in email as well, and a whole bunch of other different platforms. What I was looking for is there's an adaptive card that I had in a window previously that closed, and the adaptive card designer doesn't exactly keep cards around very nicely. Pick up the file on my desktop that has that, but they play around very nicely with Microsoft Teams as well, and they allow for submission of values and text. And so I have an example that allows you to submit your status report inline via the Teams card without actually leaving Microsoft Teams. And that is what this corresponding save response script does, is it accepts that Teams card, adaptive card response. And then we would basically be adding one more step here in Power Automate that takes the output of this Teams card and maps it back to the Excel spreadsheet, again, through an Office script. So,
all right, yeah, let's, while you look for that, let's answer a couple of questions, both in the chat here and through the question submittal form about integrating Power Automate and Office add-ins. So not necessarily Office scripts, but the added component too. So if you could speak to that, I can send you your JSON thing through Teams.
Yeah, absolutely. basically, I think what the question's asking is whether or not there's going to be some kind of official or explicit integration between add-ins in general and Power Automate. And I'm not 100% sure what the question is going for, specifically because of the fact that there is the option for users to create their own custom connectors in Power Automate. And so if you are an owner of an add-in, building an integration yourself with Power Automate is actually something that would be fairly easy to do for any developer familiar with like APIs in general. I don't really know what the question's looking for with regard to a specific one, but hopefully that gives some context.
Yeah, I think we can. Yeah, there is no like add-in in particular integration, but there is a broader, like you can make a custom connector for a service, much like how Trello has both an add-in and a connector or automate. You can make a corollary thing for your add-in. Would that be accurate to say, Danny?
Definitely.
Hey, Alex, Danny, I think there was a follow-up note on that question, which was around, the scenario was around refreshing data or having your script call a data refresh operation that your add-in would go and fetch new data on. I think at least from the add-ins, the Excel add-ins perspective, just off the top of my head, one thing you could potentially do is use Excel's calculation engine to do a refresh. So let's say you are doing custom functions and you're bringing in data from your backend through a JavaScript custom function. You could create a script that really just opens the workbook and recalculates it on some sort of demand, so to speak, I think. So
yeah,
that's
absolutely
one thing to try to check out.
Yeah, so we have not yet very deeply explored integrations between add-ins and Office scripts. That's actually something we'd be interested to hear more from you guys on, about like interest in that sort of integration and like what possible scenarios you might think of. But Carrie, your example is an excellent one. That is absolutely something we might imagine people doing someday. And at the moment, you can kind of do so in an informal way where you like recommend users creating an Office script / Power Automate combo to like do a particular thing on a regular basis. You might even be able to do so with a little bit of acrobatics on your part programmatically, as Power Automate does have a set of like management APIs that allow you to on the fly create flow either for yourself or on behalf of a user. That said, they're definitely not that like tightly integrated at the moment, and it's something that we might be interested in changing in the future and improving.
Awesome, thank you, Daniel.
Does that answer what you're going for?
Yeah, thanks.
Beautiful.
So Daniel, in your teams, there is the JSON for the example, and while you're plugging that into the adaptive card in your flow, there were a lot of questions around Blazor in the chat, and Kara, I don't know if that was addressed or not, or if you'd like to speak to that sort of support.
So I think for the moment, our team's focused on building some great experiences using Office JavaScript. And so what I would say for Blazor is we hear you. I think it's really cool technology. And the best way to voice your need for that is on our user voice channel. But I don't think we have any imminent plans for Blazor support.
Awesome. Thank you. All right, so Daniel, now that we got the adaptive card, want to talk to it?
All right, so Alex helped me out behind the scenes. Thank you very much, and was able to locate my corresponding JSON. So what I was actually going for originally is, as you can see right here in the designer, there is a update your status report card, and it's kind of a mock-up of what it might look like from a bot sending it in Teams. And what's actually going to happen is the Microsoft Flow bot is going to send this card on our behalf, but like under its own kind of like bot account to whoever we actually indicate by email in this Teams Flow connector. So again, here this thing is defined entirely by JSON. We can do some fancy things if we want to by like modifying the message to include the person's name. That is all kind of up to us, and we can do that right here. So what I've done is I've pasted this JSON blob directly into the message field of the Teams connector. And there doesn't actually need to be any real modification unless like we feel like we want it. That type of modification might look like, again, hi person's name, but really beyond typing in hi person's name or adding whatever dynamic field you actually want to, all that's required is simply this email dynamic field object and the JSON blob defining the card. Here I'm also going to modify the like update message to say thanks for your response, and then should update card is going to say yes, because this is the question of whether or not after submission of some kind of info via the card, should you change the appearance of it or should you allow more submissions later? In advanced options, I'm going to say yes, I want it to be an alert because I want it to ping and spam the person until such time as they actually have completed their report. That's part of the value here. I don't have to be the bad guy. The flow bot can be the bad guy on my behalf. And then here, I'm actually not going to leave a summary because since I don't leave a summary, it's actually going to take the text and give like the short version in, for example, like a Teams ping pop-up in your top right. So with that, I think there's only one more step that we need, which is inside the apply to each. I want to make sure to add an action that says call the run script action again from the Teams card, or using the Teams card response, target the same workbook, just in my OneDrive for Business in the top level, task reminders, and then this time, rather than running the get people script, I'm actually going to run the save response script. And this is a good example here of a script that can actually accept parameter values. So where the previous script returned an array of people, this one actually does not return a value and instead accepts values as its parameters before running. So here we know that the sender is going to be the person with the corresponding email from the Teams card. I'm actually gonna, just to make sure that there isn't anything that might get out of sync, try to use the output of the Teams card, which is lagging on me a little bit. But we can grab the output of the previous action from this Teams card here and use the user from that Teams card and then the message response normally. So I'm gonna stop trying to like mess with this demo because clearly I didn't take the requisite time to set it up. So I apologize to you guys on your behalf that you can't see this right in this moment. But I actually encourage you in the next week or two to go play around with it yourselves, because whenever I figure out what silly thing I'm doing right here that's causing it to fail, whenever I figure out what that is, it's going to work beautifully. Like, this has actually been something that we are actively using on our team in multiple places and across a couple of other teams like Microsoft Edge to like handle status report updates, send out like email reports automatically, like ping people across like 100-person teams. Like, this really is something that is actually impressively robust and like serves us very well in a number of different real business case applications. So I'm gonna like hold off on this and stop trying to be optimistic about like finagling this demo into working. Alex, I do very much appreciate you digging this up and giving everyone a chance to see what this actually would have looked like if I was able to figure out the one thing that I just missed as a step.
For sure. Yeah, here, let me share something. So thank you, Danny, for that demo and presentation. This sample of automated task reminders through Power Automate and Office Scripts will be on our Office Scripts documentation. Once the Power Automate feature or connector goes live, you can follow along with these setup instructions. Here's the script that Danny ran to get all the data and then to add it back to the workbook. We have that JSON for the adaptive card, and you can kind of follow along to see how to make your Power Automate in this sort of long form tutorial sample. Here's what it would look like. So yeah, we encourage you to check that out. I'll put a link to the documentation in the call, and that sample will be live with Power Automate, so in a couple weeks. So real quick, I'm going to go back to the PowerPoint deck. Are there any other questions we should deal with? Care, anything that you answered that you want to speak to while we're switching here?
Yeah, I think there were a couple questions going around some of the Excel APIs. So there was a question from Andy on, are there application level events accessible by Office add-ins, such as on Workbook Open before Workbook Close? Right now for Word, Excel, PowerPoint, like our API model is document centric. We do want to consider a global application level model. And because of the way our APIs work, they're asynchronous. It's difficult for us to essentially capture an event before that happens. But it is still something we're iterating on, and we just don't have any imminent plans for that scenario yet.
Totally makes sense. I know we also got some calls or some questions in through the submission form about that, so thank you for speaking to that. We also got a few questions about on-send, so we'll make sure in the follow-up blog post to answer all of the questions that have come in out of band as well, and anything we didn't address in this call. I know we're a little short on time, so if we didn't get to your question, please paste it in the chat. You can keep the conversation going after the call, the video part is done. So yeah, thank you for that. So as we wrap up, we encourage you all to engage with us. If you are working on add-ins yourself and want to present, please let us know. We welcome the community to share what they've been working on, to share your add-ins and your experiences. So we'll paste this link in the chat, but yeah, ACA-MS Office Add-ins Engage. You can also give us feedback about our documentation and the other experiences you've had with the platform. If you are new to Office add-ins, please check out our quick starts. You can get an add-in up and running in 5 minutes for Excel, Outlook, etc. Go to ACA-MS Office Add-ins Docs to find those, and to learn more about ScriptLab. So we have that now for Outlook, as we saw earlier from Courtney, but we also have ScriptLab for Excel, Word, PowerPoint. And if you're into Office scripts, the feature Danny was showcasing, check out the Office scripting documentation at ACA-MS Office Scripts Docs. You can automate your Excel tasks there, and we'll be having the Power Automate connector documentation coming within the next couple vague corporate weeks. So if you're starting out, we encourage you to check out the developer program. There you can get a tenant to start working with and developing on, so you can experience your add-in in a real deployed environment. Of course, ScriptLab. Then if you need to engage with the community, Stack Overflow is where we'd have you ask programming questions. GitHub is where if you find an issue, like with Edge WebView2, we'd love to hear your problems there and help fix them. And if you would like a feature added to the product, User Voice helps us prioritize upcoming feature requests and know which ones the community really wants. We also have a whole host of other Microsoft 365 developer community calls. Ones for Teams, for SharePoint, all that. There's a full list here, and this link list will be in the follow-up blog post. I also saw in the chat there was questions around, will there be an Office script specific community call? And that is something we're definitely considering for the future. If we get enough engagement and desire from the community, we can split it off from Office add-ins. But yeah, exciting stuff. Send us your feedback and whether that's something that interests you and your needs. So thank you so much for that. We'll be posting the recording on our YouTube channel and following up the blog post later. If you have any other questions, feel free to stay in the chat and ask them. So thank you so much for joining us this morning. And yeah, have a great rest of your week, everyone. Thank you.